This episode of CFO Thought Leader is made possible by Planful and Avalara.
Hello, this is Chitra Balasubramanian, CFO of Circle CI, and I'm pleased to welcome you all to the CFO Thought Leader podcast.
This is episode 1037.
When I came in, there were kind of three big areas that I was pushing the team forward. One was close faster, right? That it's table stakes, to be 10 days or better, foremost, in order to help drive better decisions. So timely, relevant, reliable data that our teams can make decisions off of. We also hired up. So one was bringing the finance team in-house to drive more ownership and internal expertise, and then bringing in folks that had more senior and public company experience to just set a different expectation of what's required. So brought in new leaders for FP&A, enterprise systems, and financial operations. And then lastly, I worked to earn our way into the room where decisions are made, right? The room where it happens.
Hi, it's Jack. On today's show, we speak with Regi Vengalil, CFO of Trax Retail. When the opportunity to lead the corporate travel business at Expedia arose, Regi Vengalil knew it was exactly the role he'd been seeking to put his CFO career in gear. Stepping into the position meant overseeing the finances for a business unit with $600 million in revenue and $120 million in EBITDA. And Vengalil was eager to take on the challenge. You'll hear that story and much more on today's episode. We'll begin after this.
This episode is presented by Avalara. That's the sound of not worrying about sales tax compliance. Because when you automate it with Avalara, you don't have to worry about collecting sales tax or tracking who and what is tax exempt. With Avalara, you don't even have to worry about new tax laws and regulations. Avalara does it for you. If your business sells internationally, Avalara has you covered with cross-border tax compliance solutions. And when it comes time to file tax returns, Avalara automatically takes care of that too, giving you one less thing to worry about. Avalara has managed billions of sales for small, mid-size, and enterprise businesses and seamlessly works with your current sales, e-commerce, and accounting platforms. Take the worry out of tax compliance with Avalara. Learn more at avalara.com. That's AVALARA.com.
Hello, we're speaking to Regi Vengalil, CFO of Trax Retail. Regi, welcome.
Thanks, Jack, for having me on. It's a pleasure to be here.
So, Regi, we're going to ask you to look back, and we're always looking for those experiences that prepare leaders for these finance leadership roles. What would yours be? What experiences come to mind?
Yeah, I have probably three experiences that I'll share. I started out my career as a finance professional doing investment banking and then as a corporate development professional at Expedia. But it wasn't really until I joined McKinsey in New York after business school that I felt like I was a business leader and problem solver. It was that McKinsey experience leading teams and helping clients work on some of their most important challenges that helped me build out a strategic toolkit, but also helped me to feel confident that I could be dropped in the deep end with a new client, a new industry, and be able to structure the problem, wherever I went. There was one client that we worked with, a large car rental company, where we were tasked with identifying a significant amount of cost savings as they were going through a transformation. And I co-led the diagnostic process to identify savings. And we identified something like 500 million of savings. And then we eventually helped to deliver almost 1.5 times that. And so it just helped me to build the confidence that I could approach any problem in a structured way and lead a team against it. After leaving McKinsey, I went on to lead strategy at Lending Club, a public online lender. And then I came back to Expedia to lead M&A and strategy globally. So in my first week back at Expedia, we had the chance to review a deal with a chairman, Barry Diller, and the CEO at the time, Dara Khosrowshahi, who's now at Uber. Now, this was a deal that Dara wanted to do for a number of reasons, including valuation and strategic fit. I wasn't as strong an advocate. And so after Dara shared why he wanted to do the deal, Mr. Dillard turned to me, and again, it's my first week, and he says, "Hey, new guy, what do you think?" And I went into the reasons, I felt strongly that it wasn't a fit and why there was more risk than upside at pursuing the deal at the valuation suggested. And after the meeting, I, went up a little apologetically to Dara to say sorry for not selling the deal. And he told me he didn't want it any other way. That I was the closest to the deal. That I was in the room to share my point of view. And so it was reinforcing to me that both the importance of coming with a well-researched perspective, but also how important it was to cultivate a team who felt empowered to come with that point of view. And then maybe the last experience I'd share is actually my first CFO role. So I had the opportunity to step into a business unit CFO role at Expedia. So I'm leading finance for Agencia, which was the corporate travel business for Expedia. To give you a sense of scale, about a 600 million revenue, 120 million EBITDA business at the time. Jack, I took this role about 3 months before COVID hit. So all of our plans to grow the business and do M&A to accelerate it, they went out the window. And we were seeing greater than negative 100% growth rates, which I'd never seen before, because not only was no one booking travel, they were canceling all future travel. And so, our focus went entirely to reducing the cost structure and frankly, helping the team navigate what the future of return to travel could look like. And it was one of the hardest forecast problems I'd ever seen because, getting it wrong either meant travel would return too quickly and we didn't have enough people to serve our clients, or travel would return too slowly and we'd bear significant losses. And this was further complicated because we had a global workforce in markets across Europe where scaling up and down, was difficult and resource intensive. But our team helped to transform the business. We took out, probably $150 million worth of cost. We were able to get the business to break even at call it 55% of the return to travel of the 2019 levels. And so we were able to set the business up for an eventual sale to American Express for about $1 billion just 15 months later.
Great story. Looking in your past, it seems like from the very start, it was business with you. I mean, it wasn't necessarily finance, or was it? What would you tell us? And again, you went to Wharton undergrad, and then you go back and you get an MBA at Wharton a few years later. So it was always business, anyway.
It was. Listen, from being a young kid, my dad would share with me the stocks that he was investing in, and so I was always interested in business problems. My wife will joke with me, I'm the person at a dinner party in the corner, talking about companies, giving career advice, taking career advice. Like that's what gives me energy, and it started from a pretty young age. And so, as an undergrad, I was more focused on the finance side. And in going back to business school, I actually focused more on the strategy and management side. It was a place where I felt was both missing and complementary to the skill set that I had built.
I think it's interesting too. You returned to Expedia. You returned to Wharton. You're kind of a creature of habit. I don't know, but
yeah, I mean, I knew in going back to business school, as I shared, I was looking to build out that strategy toolkit. And so the goal, in going back to business school was to leave, with the opportunity to work at a McKinsey, Bain, BCG. And I was fortunate to have the summer opportunity to join McKinsey, had a great experience, and decided to rejoin after graduating. And honestly, Jack, it delivered on everything I was hoping for from that experience of building that kind of core toolkit and leading teams. As an engagement manager at McKinsey, you're responsible for owning the answer and supporting the team to get to that, managing the partners and the client. And so, that's probably one of the most powerful roles that I've had in my development is being in that manager role and kind of owning the answer. That was a really important part of my development.
The strategy path versus the finance path. Did you find yourself sort of part of both worlds, it looks like, as you went forward?
That's right. I always, just given my finance background and skill set, it was always the lens in which I would look at strategic problems. And so, in coming into Lending Club, there was a separate and strong finance team and even M&A team. It was part of what I wanted to build out is that kind of complementary toolkit. But over time, I just found myself gravitating back to M&A and to finance. And so it was just a natural transition over time.
When is it that you said, okay, I'd love to be a CFO? Let me, do what I have to do to get that role. I mean, you could have become a chief strategy officer. You could have become any number of C-suite occupants.
It's a great question. So I was fortunate being a part of the Expedia executive team. We were doing a big transformation in 2019, and as a part of that, the CEO, who had previously been the CFO at Expedia Group, and the CFO and I were just talking through what could that next role be, because they were moving a bunch of pieces around the chessboard. And this opportunity opened up at the corporate travel business. And so, among the set of opportunities that that opened up, that was the one that most appealed to me. I was leading a team of strategy and M&A professionals that was probably 6 or 7 folks, and the agency team was 120 around the world. And so it was a way for me to jump in with both feet to kind of get a full it wasn't just a pure FP&A role. I had commercial finance, I had accounting, I even had a systems team, I had financial operations. So it was a full CFO role and a global team that I still knew very well. Because I had led strategy for the company, I'd gotten to know the business and the business unit leaders very well. So it felt like the right way to take some risk, but in a safe way. And so that's what encouraged me to take that role.
Was there any last box you felt you had to check as the CFO role drew near? Was there something, a skill set, just an experience, something that you pursued, you recall?
I mean, to be honest, it was. I spent quite a bit of my time in that role, in that first CFO role. It was a risk that the team was taking on me, right? I had been primarily a strategy and M&A professional, as you can see, and so it was a bit of a risk. The great thing was, and this is part of the Expedia culture, there had been a long track record of Mr. Diller and Dara and Mark Okerstrom, who was the CEO after Dara, who had come through this kind of strategy and M&A path. So Dara actually used to lead corp dev for IAC before he became the CFO and then CEO. Mark had led corp dev before being the CFO. And so it was just a natural path of seeing the breadth of the business, understanding the finance domain to begin to kind of step into that role. And so, to be honest, it was less about the experiences before and more about the experiences in. So I spent a lot of time not on the finance part where I felt the most comfortable, but it was really thinking about the commercial finance. So helping look at an individual sales transaction and understanding our margin thresholds. This is something we'll come back to as we talk about the strategic finance moment. I spent a lot of time on collections, especially in a post-COVID world of trying to find every dollar. That was a place of intense focus. So it was in the areas where I was less familiar that I spent quite a bit of time, in that first CFO role.
Nice. Well, we might have a few more career-related questions for you a little later. Right now, let's find out about Trax Retail. What sets this company apart? What is it about today? Tell us.
Yeah, so I'd say high level, Trax's solution captures real-time images of shelf conditions, converts it into data that CPG brands, so the largest brands in the world, think Diageo, Mondelez, they use that to make better informed decisions about what to do at the shelf and to help them drive incremental sales. So we're the global leader of providing this image recognition solutions to brick and mortar CPG companies.
How old a company is this?
It's about 12 years old.
12 years old. And can you give us maybe an abbreviated history of its capital structure?
Over the last 10 or 12 years, we've been able to bring on a great set of investors. So SoftBank led our last round and invested north of $200 million directly into the company, as well as Warburg Pincus, GIC, BlackRock. And so we've had great support from some pretty high quality investors that that continue to support us.
And you step into the CFO role in 2022. Was there anything you wanted to reorganize or change about finance, put greater emphasis or deploy people differently? Anything you can share with us?
Yeah, when I came in, there were probably three areas I was focused on improving. The first was it took about 2 months to close the books. And so it delayed all of our teams having good data to make decisions. Second, because of that, because of the delay in timing, finance didn't really have a seat at the table in supporting decisions. And so decisions were made, with folks doing their best, but without the valuable financial data. And then third, most of the finance team was actually outsourced. They had done a team transition from Singapore to the US. And so, just wasn't as consistent or experienced resources that were embedded in the work. And so, when I came in, there were kind of three big areas that I was pushing the team forward. One was close faster, right? That it's table stakes, to be 10 days or better. Um, Foremost, in order to help drive better decisions. So timely, relevant, reliable data that our teams can make decisions off of. We also hired up. So one was bringing the finance team in-house to drive more ownership and internal expertise. And then, bringing in folks that had more senior and public company experience to just set a different expectation of what's required. So brought in new leaders for FP&A, enterprise systems, and financial operations, many of whom I had worked with previously, because I knew the standard that they set. And then lastly, I work to earn our way into the room where decisions are made, right? The room where it happens. It starts with role modeling the expectations of a finance leader and the role that we're supposed to play. So relevant and helpful financial information that are inputs to making better informed decisions. And so, once it's clear the value we can add, it's then about setting expectations with my team and then with our business partners that there needs to be a finance person at the table.
And what can you tell us in terms of the metrics that matter? How you might have raised the profile of a certain metric across the organization, or when it comes to KPIs, what's important?
Sure. So one of the big areas, I would say, we run a crowd merchandising business that's similar to an Uber or DoorDash, but for visits in store. So, unpacking products on the shelf or setting up displays. And we had run that business largely to drive growth, but didn't have a lot of discipline around the margins of that business. And so in coming in, this is similar to work that I had done at Agencia, at Expedia. It was setting minimum deal size thresholds because every project had work that was required as a part of it. It was having minimum deal margins, which we had never had before, to ensure that there weren't any negative margin deals. And then just having a process by which we're trading off margin for growth. And as a part of driving that in partnership with the operations and the commercial team, we were able to expand margins in that segment by 30 points over the last 2 years. So pretty meaningful transformation.
Going about that, forming those relationships with the operations people, can you step back in time, salespeople? And how did you all begin to find your footing to collaborate like that? You're a new CFO, you stepped into the role, you made it happen clearly, but what advice would you have for other teams?
Yeah, it starts with, and this is why I started there, it starts with having reliable data that everyone can look at the same facts and figures together. Folks might have different perspectives about it, but if we're using the same, base support of data, it allows that to not be the source of debate. And when you're closing, in 2 months, it can be the source of debate because data can be out of date, if you will, and not as relevant to be making decisions. So first was establishing the baseline of data, and then second, in general, my experience is everyone's trying to do the right thing for the company, and the previous bias might have been towards growth versus margin. And so it was a little bit about resetting everyone's expectations towards what the new goals and priorities were. And I think it resonated with everyone of the reorientation of, hey, we were here and now we're trying to go here. And so it wasn't as difficult a conceptual. The execution of it was obviously challenging for the teams to kind of deliver against, but the concept of what we were trying to accomplish, I think, as long as it was on a clear baseline of data, that was the part that I think oriented people. So having the right set of data and having clear expectations and goals about where we were trying to go were essential to kind of getting everyone to the table. And then it was more of an informed discussion about what is the right minimum margin for a deal and where would we make exceptions and trade-offs. And I think that was able to get folks at the table to be committed to a minimum margin, but recognize for the right strategic or longer term relationship, we would make exceptions to that.
And you mentioned how you brought the finance team in-house. Was it accounting that had been outsourced, or what parts of the...
It was actually the FP&A team was probably 2/3 outsourced at the time, and it was a part of a team location transition that had led to that. I had never seen that before, and so it was really important for me that the FP&A function is such a strategic function, and so bringing in-house those resources to really be the kind of financial voice of the company to help guide each of the functions on both tracking to how they're doing to plan, but also help them make day-to-day decisions. That was a really important part. And I think, to be fair to the teams that were there, they had consultants effectively providing them that support with out-of-date data. So it's consultants with out-of-date data. You can imagine why they didn't always have a finance person at the table. And so for me, it was key to change both of those things, right? It needed to be your trusted partner that you knew was going to be there tomorrow, and they had reliable data that you could partner with to help make better decisions.
And at the same time, those FP&A professionals who became part of your team in-house, these are the people you're asking to have a seat at the table with other parts of the company. I would imagine they're more welcome when they're part of the company to sit in on those types of meetings. Or
that's right, absolutely. It changes the orientation when you feel like the person around the table is on the same team as you. So I think that was a part of it. The other part, and I know I keep coming back to it, but having data that you can use to make better decisions, that's what gets you into the door, and then it's incumbent upon the finance business partner to be able to add value with that data, right? It's like it's not enough to have good data and be a part of the team. You've got to be able to use it to help your business partner, your functional executive, to make better decisions.
It sounds like you've come a long way as far as getting the data where you want it to be. Is there another yet threshold that you're aiming for? And what would the criteria be? I don't know.
Yeah, of course. No, I mean, I think there's an opportunity for us to automate a lot more of how that data is shared, visibility to our teams, even intra-month on how we're progressing against it. That's probably the next stage of investment for us as a team. On the finance side, it's on this access to data for our business partners in a more visible and transparent way. It would be a key priority.
We want to touch on AI with you quickly. Can you share with us how AI is part of a business advantage that your offerings might have?
Yeah, AI is at the forefront of the work we do at Trax, just given the central nature of the computer vision models in our offering. So, we continue to innovate and automate, some of the hardest problems. But one area we're focused on is how do we move more of our model capabilities from the cloud into the edge? It'll help better access for our clients in kind of poor internet reception stores, as they're using their phone. If they don't have to take a photo, push it to the cloud and wait for a response, but the recognition is happening on the device, it'll improve the speed and experience of getting real-time recognition. So that's a place where, we're investing in and focused on. We're also seeing it honestly broadly across the business of trying to test and learn where we can see real leverage. So we're seeing some acceleration benefit on the speed to market on content creation. We're seeing increase in productivity from our engineers and using GitHub Copilot. So I would say it's at the core of the solution that we're developing, but we're also trying to test where we could see leverage outside of that.
What about the finance function? Is there a role that AI can have in planning? What do you see?
Yeah, absolutely. I think we probably have one more step to get the data in a place where we can leverage AI to better transform it and do scenario planning and modeling. But but for sure, the ability to test multiple scenarios, look at what the range of outcomes can be. I think AI will be an extremely valuable tool to support that.
Excellent. Well, we're up to our finance strategic moment question, where we ask you just to share one moment of insight that you've had along the way due to those lines of sight that you've had as a finance and strategy executive. What would you tell us? What comes to mind when we ask for a finance strategic moment?
Sure. A finance strategic moment for me that influenced my career was assessing the impact of working capital utilization early on in my tenure as CFO at Agencia. Because we were a subsidiary unit, we weren't measured on capital efficiency, but really only on our P&L performance. And as a part of offering corporate travel services to small and medium-sized businesses, especially in Europe, we were paying for clients' travel and then billing them for it afterward. But we weren't taking into account the cost of effectively lending to clients as a part of assessing their profitability. And so we found that there were certain clients that were both lower margin, which we knew, but also had longer payment terms, and they were pushing them well below our margin thresholds if we had taken that into account. And so, we approached those clients differently. Either we had to extract higher margins in the core solution, or we had to go back to them to renegotiate some of the payment terms to ensure that these were still profitable accounts for us. This insight had stayed with me, frankly, in every role I've had since. With the broader insight being making sure that cash and working capital optimization was at the center of how I manage the business, but also for a B2B business in particular, making sure to assess client profitability, taking into account payment terms that folks were seeking. That was a new insight for me, and just an essential part of how I've managed the business.
Ready to plan confidently, close faster, and report more accurately? Here's what sets Planful apart. Imagine purpose-built applications for every department, from FP&A to accounting, marketing to HR, all with built-in financial intelligence. It's easy to implement Planful in just weeks and with minimal IT involvement, so you can rapidly and seamlessly engage everyone across the business on your key financial progress. Best of all, Planful grows with you. Its unparalleled scalability ensures that no matter how fast your business expands, Planful can keep up. See why over 1,500 customers worldwide choose Planful as their flexible, user-friendly, end-to-end financial performance management platform. Go to planful.com/CFO Thought Leader to see how you can reach peak financial performance with Planful. We're going to move to our mentoring round, where we're going to once more ask you to look back. And we want you to think about that first 60 days after you stepped into a CFO role for the first time. And if you could go back in time and just tell yourself something, there was something you just didn't know as closely as you had observed other CFOs, as closely. You were a unit CFO before that, but there was something you would go back and tell yourself today. Anything?
Yeah, of course. I think we all face a bit of imposter syndrome when we're taking on our first senior executive roles. So I think advice I'd give my younger self is to trust your voice, right? You deserve to be there. You've earned it. You're there because of the insights and experiences that have helped you to earn your seat. So believe that you have a valuable point of view to share. I probably censored myself early on as I was trying to, get my feet wet and didn't share early enough, the places where I did have a stronger perspective. And so, that's what I share. Trust your voice.
We always like to ask our guests to reflect a little on the personal side with us. We're wondering if there's something most of your colleagues might not know about you, something an interest you might have, something from your past? Don't know. Anything come to mind?
Yeah, I live in you can see it in the picture behind me, Jack. I live in a multi-generational household. We're fortunate to have my mother-in-law live with us and play an important role in our lives. And I actually expect my parents to move with us in the next year or two, so it'll be a full house. And so, growing up in Seattle, I always was jealous of my friends who had their grandparents that lived nearby, while mine were in India. And so I'm really most appreciative of the opportunities that my kids have and will have to be able to spend time, closely with their grandparents.
Oh, how nice. That's wonderful. What about a book or a resource for us? Something that's influenced you or you've escaped with, maybe? I don't know. Anything?
I really like The Outsiders. It's a great book by William Thorndike. It's about 8 unconventional CEOs who are focused on value creation through and long-term oriented capital allocation. That's one that I come back to.
Okay, so before our time is up here, I have to ask you this question. You're in a conference room back in your Expedia days, and the door swings open, and it's Barry Diller. Uh, what does he tell you? No, did he make what kind of impression did this, captain of industry in many people's minds? What kind of impression did he make on you?
Oh, absolutely. It's hard for him not to make an impression, for sure. I think the thing that I take away, Mr. Diller has a very high standard for the teams and leaders that work with him, and um, I think one lesson that I've taken from that experience is how do you clarify and simplify what's in front of you. There's in every industry, in every role, there's complexity, but if you don't understand it, you won't be able to communicate it simply. And so that was something he always impressed upon us, and it's been something I've taken away.
Would he and let the room know that's not clear? That's
Oh yeah, absolutely. In his own natural way, he would make it clear that I was making it too complex, and that I could benefit from of simplifying it and challenging me in a thoughtful and way to push us instructive, right? To push what the standard is like. And I Dara was a great example of this, right? The reason why they had built such a close relationship was Dara had built one of the first models when Mr. Diller was starting to acquire companies, and Diller was over his shoulder asking him questions about the model he was building, and that's how they formed the relationship. Now 30 plus years later, and I think about that a lot of the support and encouragement of even junior staff. Like there's an early deal, actually one of the first deals I worked on in Expedia when I was 24 or 25. Dara asked, we get to the end of the meeting, and Dara's mulling on an approach, and he asked me what I think before he decides to share his point of view. And so very early on, this idea of soliciting a broader perspective has just been something that's been encouraged and supported.
Nice. Well, thank you for that. We are up to our final question, Regi, where we're going to ask you to look forward finally. And we're wondering about the next 12 months as far as your CFO priorities. What would those be?
Yeah, we've talked about them a little bit. One is, as we prepare the company for any future outcome, it'll be ensuring that we've got the right compliance and controls in place, from the enterprise systems perspective, but also from a core financial controls perspective. Second, it's really about continuing that business partner journey that we were talking about earlier, Jack. It's ensuring that we're embedded in all of the conversations, we're delivering on the timelines that we're saying, and we're frankly more proactive than reactive to the types of needs and questions that we're assessing for the business. And maybe the last is, and I talked about it a little bit before, but continuing to optimize our working capital. In the short term, it's managing payments, but in the medium to long term, it's how do we design new business models that are more attractive from us. When you work with large CPG companies, they tend to ask for very long terms, and so how do we design new approaches to partner with them that are advantageous for us?
Regi Vengalil, thank you for joining us on CFO Thought Leader.
Thank you for having me.
Hello, everyone. Jack here. Hope you've been enjoying our recent episodes of CFO Thought Leader. Please know that I don't take for granted this opportunity to serve you. Your time is valuable, and of course, so is the time of our CFO guests. I'll admit to you on certain weeks, I will pinch myself and say, hey, I get to do this for a living. I speak to all these impressive leaders. Undoubtedly, there are more aggressive interviewers out there, some who leave no stone unturned. But our swim lane is for finance leaders only. And those finance leaders have a unique style of leadership, one that is rooted in the burden of trust. In light of this, finance leaders must take great care not to forfeit this trust as they step into the role of being a more expressive leader. And that is what CFO Thought Leader is really about. That's why I try to remind myself week in, week out, how fortunate I am. Still, I need your help. Tell us what we're doing right. Tell us what we're doing wrong. Email me your comments at jack@cfothoughtleader.com. And please visit cfothoughtleader.com. You'll find a listener survey right on the nav bar. As always, thank you for listening.